They told me seduction was an art. That, with the right words, the right smile, and a perfectly timed look, anyone could fall. I was trained in this art, polished, precise, and dangerous. My orders were simple: get close to the demon prince, learn his secrets, and destroy him from the inside. No room for hesitation. No place for emotion. Kale wasn't what I expected. The rumors painted him as a monster who bathed in blood and whispered curses into the hearts of kings. But when I first entered his court, cloaked in a fabricated title and a forged allegiance, I found something entirely different. His presence was quiet, deliberate, like a storm that didn't roar, but loomed. He saw me immediately, not just in the literal sense. His golden eyes met mine the moment I stepped into the obsidian hall, but in a way that unsettled me. It was as if he already knew who I was and what I'd come to do. But he said nothing, only nodded slightly, and turned away, his long dark coat trailing behind like smoke. In the days that followed, I played my role flawlessly. I laughed at the right jokes, flirted with the lesser demons to catch his attention, moved through the corridors like a shadow, designed to be noticed. I left little gifts where I knew his path would cross, books with pages bookmarked in ancient languages, rare herbs for his tea, a single feather from a fallen archangel. He didn't react at first. Then one night, he summoned me. His quarters were dimly lit, all dark velvet and silver edges. He sat by the fire, one leg crossed over the other, sipping from a carved obsidian cup. I've heard you've taken an interest in me, he said without looking up. I didn't lie. Interest is inevitable, isn't it? He smiled at that, but it didn't reach his eyes. Flattery is too easy, and I don't care for it. If you want something, ask. A trap, I knew it. But I leaned forward, letting the silence stretch. I want to know you. This time, the smile did reach his eyes, just a flicker, like light catching on the edge of a blade. Then stay and stop, pretending to be someone else. The words knocked the breath from me, but I didn't leave. From that night on, something shifted. He didn't send for me again, but he didn't avoid me either. Our interactions were brief, but charged. I watched him speak in council meetings with cold logic, yet pause outside the gardens to admire falling petals. He would study maps of mortal cities with a strategist's mind, then play the piano at night, when he thought no one listened. He was a contradiction I couldn't piece together, and perhaps that was the point. One afternoon, I found him in the West Wing alone, examining a cracked stained glass window. I asked what he saw. Memory, he said, and mistakes. I wanted to ask more, about the war, about the legends, about the quiet in his voice that no demon should carry. But I stayed silent, and so did he. It should have made things easier. My target had a heart, flawed, open, and vulnerable. But instead, I found myself hesitating. The reports I sent back to the resistance grew vague. I left out details small at first, then larger ones. I told myself it was strategy, that I was earning trust, but I knew the truth. He was never supposed to feel real. That night, I returned to my chamber and stared at the blade beneath my pillow. The mission was still the same. The price of failure wasn't just mine, it could cost thousands of lives. I reminded myself who he was: a demon prince, a threat to the mortal realm, a creature born from darkness. And yet, the next morning, I woke to a note slid under my door. You lie better than most, but your eyes betray you. Come tonight. I'll pour the tea. Signed with a single initial, K. My hand trembled slightly as I held the note. Not from fear, not even guilt, but something more dangerous. Something I couldn't afford. Interest had become curiosity. Curiosity had become attachment. And now, I was slipping. Worse. I wasn't sure I wanted to stop. Kale's quarters were bathed in the hush of twilight, the room glowing with the low shimmer of candlelight and the faint crackle of a dying fire. He didn't greet me with words. He simply gestured toward the seat across from him, where a steaming cup of tea waited, black, hibiscus, sharp and earthy. Asterisk, I sat, unsure if I was entering a trap or a confession. Asterisk, you've been quiet lately, he said, voice as smooth as poured ink, even for a spy. Asterisk, I stiffened, pulse hammering. Is that what you think I am? Asterisk, I don't think, he replied. I observe. Asterisk, I reached for the tea, using the motion to collect myself. He wasn't bluffing anymore if he ever was, and yet, he hadn't exposed me. Not to his counsel. Not to his guards. Not to death. Asterisk, why invite me here then? I asked, watching him over the rim of the cup. Asterisk, because, despite the lie, you've been more honest than anyone I've known in years. Asterisk, the words unsettled me more than any accusation. I set the cup down carefully. I didn't come here to hurt you. Asterisk, that's the most dangerous kind of betrayal, he said quietly. The kind that pretends not to be. Asterisk silence followed. Not awkward, but dense, like the air had thickened with everything we weren't saying. Outside, wind rattled the stained glass windows, and the flickering shadows painted strange shapes across the floor. Asterisk, I was told you were cruel, I said after a moment. That you killed without cause. That your love was a weapon. Asterisk, he raised an eyebrow. And do you believe that now? Asterisk, I didn't answer. Couldn't. He studied me for a long moment, then leaned forward. Asterisk, there was someone once, a mortal. Like you, he promised peace. Swore he'd love me in secret until the end of days. I gave him my name, my trust, my heart. And in the end, he sold me for a crown. Asterisk, pain laced the words, buried deep but still present, like old bones beneath new soil. You never speak of that war, I said softly. What good are scars if they only reopen? Asterisk, another pause. Then Cale stood and walked toward the balcony, the night wind stirring the long edges of his coat. I followed, drawn not by duty but something I couldn't name. The sky was vast and burning with stars, the moon heavy and redder. Sin, some would say, of curses or revelations. Asterisk, he looked at me then, expression unreadable. I should hate you. Asterisk, I wouldn't blame you. Asterisk, and yet, his fingers brushed mine, barely a touch, barely permission. You feel like something I once lost. Asterisk, I let the silence answer for me. I didn't step back, didn't lie. I just stood there, heart caught between orders and instinct, between betrayal and something far more fragile. Asterisk, Cale turned to face me fully. Say the word, and I'll pretend we never met. Asterisk, I don't want to pretend, I whispered. Asterisk, his eyes searched mine, and for a moment, the world narrowed to breath and warmth and fear. He closed the distance between us, and when his lips touched mine, it wasn't violent or possessive, was slow, mournful, like he was kissing the ghost of a past life. I didn't resist. Asterisk, in that moment, I stopped being the seducer. I became the one seduced. Asterisk, when we parted, neither of us spoke. He returned to his chair, and I to mine. The fire had dimmed, casting more shadow than light. I reached for my tea again, but it had gone cold. Asterisk, the silence between us had changed. No longer a weapon, no longer a shield, just the hush between two people caught in the middle of something neither could name. Asterisk, later. In the privacy of my room, I opened the sealed letter from the resistance. Instructions, written in code I'd memorized since youth. Eliminate the target within 3 days. Send confirmation upon completion. Asterisk, my hands didn't shake, but my heart did. Asterisk, I folded the letter slowly, then stared at the wall where shadow had once touched mine. Asterisk, he had laid down his sword tonight. Let his guard drop, and I had let myself fall just far enough to see him not as a threat, but as a man. Asterisk, the mission was no longer a game. It had become a choice. Asterisk, and choices have consequences. Asterisk. The next 2 days passed like hours stretched thin over blades. Every moment with Cale felt too vivid, too fragile, like a memory forming before the present had even faded. I told myself I was still playing a role, that every soft word and lingering glance was calculated. But lies told often enough become truths, and somewhere along the line, I stopped pretending. He took me to the quiet places of the castle, gardens that bloomed only under moonlight, an abandoned library buried beneath the stone, filled with books older than kingdoms. We didn't always speak. Sometimes we just existed side by side, like the silence itself had grown tired of war. In one of those moments, he traced a sigil into the dirt with a gloved finger. "This used to mean devotion," he said. "Now, it means nothing. Words change when hearts do." He didn't look at me, but I knew he was thinking of the mortal who had betrayed him, and maybe, unknowingly, of me. I wanted to say something, anything to break the weight of it. But the truth sat heavy in my chest. A name, a mission, a blade still hidden beneath my cloak. That night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered through the halls like a ghost, memories echoing off the cold stone. Every hallway whispered his name. Every closed door felt like one I was choosing not to walk through. In the mirror above the basin in my chamber. I didn't recognize myself. My face was the same, but the certainty in my eyes was gone. I wasn't a spy anymore. I wasn't a soldier. I was just a man who had fallen into something forbidden, something impossible, and yet I couldn't pull myself away. At dawn, I found Kale in the eastern wing, standing in front of a mural depicting a battle I knew too well. His posture was rigid, hands clasped behind his back. "You came early," he said, without turning. I couldn't sleep. He nodded once, slowly. "They've moved troops near the border. The resistance, they're preparing to strike." I stepped closer. "How do you know?" "Because I used to think like them. I recognized the rhythm of betrayal." The word hit me like a slap. I opened my mouth, but he turned to face me before I could speak. "Will you tell me now?" he asked quietly. "The real reason you came here." I hesitated, caught between the safety of silence and the risk of truth. "I came to end you," I said at last. "That was the plan." There was no reaction. No flicker of surprise or anger, just a soft breath as he looked at Minot, like I was his enemy, but like I was something inevitable. "And now?" "I don't know," I whispered. "Everything's changed." He stepped toward me slowly, his gaze unwavering. "You should have killed me when you had the chance." "I couldn't." "Why?" I searched his face for something to hold onto, something solid in this collapsing world of shifting loyalties and impossible choices. "Because you're not what they said, and maybe neither am I." He closed the distance between us, his voice low and cold. "I should turn you in, strip you of your lies. Let my counsel judge you." I nodded. "You should." "But I won't." His eyes flicked down to my lips, then back up again. "Because I'm tired of endings. And you, despite everything, feel like a beginning I was never allowed to have." The ache that rose in my throat was sudden and raw. I looked away, but he lifted a hand to my chin, turning my face back to his dot. "Don't lie to me again," he said. "If there's anything left of this, whatever it is, it has to live in truth." I nodded, because words would fail me. When he left, I stood in the hallway for a long time, heart thudding like a war drum. I knew then that I couldn't send the confirmation. The resistance would take that as treason, and they wouldn't wait for explanations. My life, already fragile, was dangling by a single choice. I burned the letter that night. Watched the ash curl and fall like black snow in the basin. And when I looked up, my reflection in the mirror was finally clear. The spy was gone. But the cost of that transformation hadn't yet been paid. The castle felt different after that night, not safer, never that, but quieter, like the walls themselves had stopped waiting for betrayal. I moved through its corridors with a strange clarity, aware of every glance, every breath, every decision that had led me here. The resistance had gone silent. No more coded messages, no more whispers in the dark. They'd received my silence and interpreted it for what it was. Defection, and I knew the consequences were already on their way. Kale didn't ask questions, not directly. But I saw the worry behind his composure, the tension in his shoulders. When he stood at the windows, watching the forest beyond the outer wall, he knew something was coming to. I've kept you here longer than I should have, he said one morning, voice flat but careful. You were always meant to be temporary. So was this war, I replied. But it doesn't end just because we want it to. He studied me then not as a ruler, not as a demon prince, but as a man, learning the weight of uncertainty. Do you regret it? No, I said, without hesitation. But I'm afraid of what happens next. That fear bloomed into reality before nightfall. The attack was swift, brutal, and strategic. The resistance knew the castle's weak points because I had once mapped them myself. Explosions shattered the eastern watchtower. Fires spilled through the lower halls. Screams tore through the corridors as steel clashed against steel. I found Kale in the war room. Sword drawn, cloak torn at the shoulder. Blood streaked his temple, but his eyes were clear. They're not here for my throne, he said. They're here for you. I didn't deny it. Then let me end it. He caught my wrist before I could move. No, I started this, Kale. Let me be the one to stop it. You're not theirs anymore, he said. You're mine. The words shouldn't have meant what they did, but in that moment, they were everything. I pulled free, not in rejection, but in purpose. I made it as far as the Great Hall before they found me. The leader of the resistance stepped forward, sword dripping with shadow flame, eyes hard as stone. Traitor, he spat. You were supposed to deliver us his head, not lie in his bed. I came to kill a monster, I said, voice steady. But I found a man instead, a better one than you. There was no negotiation after that. Only violence. We fought beneath the shattered chandelier, light fractured and flaring with every clash of metal. I held my ground longer than I should have, driven not by skill, but by something deeper, more desperate. Then, just as the resistance commander raised his blade for the final blow, Kale appeared wreathed in flame, eyes glowing like molten silver. He didn't speak, he didn't hesitate. In a single motion, he drove his blade through the commander's chest. Silence followed. Thick and final. Kale turned to me, breathing hard, blood soaking his sleeves. You would have died for me. I already did, I whispered. The day I stopped lying. He reached for me then, fingers trembling as they touched my face. I don't want to lose you. You won't, I said. Not to them, not to fear, not to the past. Together, we walked through the ruined hall. The flames had begun to die, smoke curling like the end of a long dream. Survivors gathered around us not as enemies, not as subjects, but as witnesses to something they didn't yet understand. Kale raised his hand, not in command, but in peace. The war ends tonight, he said. With fire, yes, but also with forgiveness. The room held its breath. Later, when the castle was quiet again and the bodies had been buried, we stood on the same balcony where this had all begun. The stars blinked faintly above us. The moon, once red, had turned silver again. Kale's arm wrapped around my waist, firm and certain. You changed everything. I just told the truth. And in doing so, he murmured, you made me believe again. I leaned into him, feeling the beat of his heart against mine, proof that this somehow was real. Not a mission, not a lie, not a game, a dangerous love, born in betrayal, forged in war, and, now finally, ours to keep, for as long as truth could hold, for as long as love could survive.